Just a reminder to our Speculating Wildly About Crime listeners, this is for entertainment purposes only and solely the thoughts and opinions of our team. We do invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Welcome to Speculating Wildly About Crime. My name is Cindy, and today I'm going to be bringing you a story suggested by one of our listeners, Patience, who asked that we cover the case of the Bakersfield 3. This is a perplexing case that continues to baffle investigators and intrigue communities. So this case revolves around three individuals, Micah Holsonbake, James Kulstad, and Baylee Despot. In the space of 5 weeks in 2018, Micah goes missing, James is murdered, and then Baylee disappears too. However, there are a lot of other people connected to this case in one way or another. I will try to cover most of the interactions and connect the dots, but I am sure I will miss some. So please refer to the Bakersfield 3 podcast and other news stories for more detailed information if I've missed anything. Links will be in the show notes. This is where I got most of my research for this. And for my swag pack, please feel free to take notes because there will be a lot of names flying around. In 2018, this case sent shockwaves through Bakersfield, California, raising questions that have yet to find answers. Join me as we navigate the potential connections, complex timelines, and lingering mysteries surrounding these vanished lives. So let's start with what brought these three people together. Micah Holsonbake was 34 years old at the time of his disappearance. He had a promising start to his life. After a year in college, he made the decision to join the Navy. However, his journey took an unexpected turn when he was discharged during basic training due to a growth in his throat. Returning home, Micah got married, had a child, and established a successful career in banking. Despite the positive beginnings, Micah faced challenges. Separation from his wife and recurring throat issues leading to multiple surgeries marked a downward spiral. The surgeries led to dependency on pain meds, and when prescriptions were no longer available, Micah sought them elsewhere, eventually resulting in a dangerous overdose on pills laced with fentanyl. The overdose brought him perilously close to death, but a quick intervention with Narcan saved him. But his family believes that this incident may have caused some potential brain damage. At a low point, new friends exploited Micah's past military experience in the Navy. They manipulated Micah into helping them produce guns. This put him in contact with some shady characters for sure. He was later shown to be selling and manufacturing AR-15s. Baylee Despot and her boyfriend Matt Queen were also involved in this and were helping Micah execute a gun sale in March of 2018. According to court documents, Matt Queen had the equipment and the ability to make the guns, and Micah was the one who sold them. Baylee was the one who would advertise the sale. I'll put a pin in that for later, and we'll discuss more with Baylee and Matt. All of these factors may have led to his disappearance on March 23rd, 2018, and we'll come back to Micah later, but for now, we'll move on to the second of the Bakersfield 3, James Kulstad. James was 38 years old at the time of his murder. About 20 years ago, his girlfriend had died in a car accident after she had drove off from an argument that they had. He was left to raise their baby daughter, Cameron. Now, his daughter was living with her grandma, but her and James still had a good relationship. And he was described by Cameron, who was now 18, as the cool surfer guy. And she adored her dad, who was also a health nut and an entrepreneur. He owned his own skate shop and had patents out for things related to skateboarding, like something called a torch truck. I don't know anything about skateboarding, but it was something that would cause sparks when the skateboard was on the handrails when they do the tricks.
I had the big skateboarding era back in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
I know. Yep.
Around 2016, James encountered even more hardships after he was hit by a car and prescribed opioids for his injuries, leading to addiction and an association with a risky crowd. Somehow it always seems to go hand in hand with opioids. So he started with fentanyl patches and then he moved to heroin. And somewhere around this time is where he also became friends with Micah through the bank that Micah worked at. And he had even helped Micah move a few weeks before Micah's disappearance. And James himself was already involved in some criminal activity. James was stealing checks from the mail and colluding with a chiropractor to cash the checks through his business account, and they were splitting the ill-gotten gains between the two of them. The chiropractor, Dr. Bajwa, was also a shady character and had previously been arrested on drug and gun charges, leading him to give up his chiropractor's license. So on April 8th, 2018, Ryan, which was James's brother, and some friends were at Dr. Bajwa's house. Dr. Bajwa insisted that Ryan bring one of the girls home as he no longer wanted her there. And he also warned Ryan to keep his brother away from him, or he would send his boys after James. Apparently, Dr. Bajwa owed James a large sum of money, presumably from their mail fraud activities, and he didn't have it to give to James. However, James was already standing outside when Ryan came out to drive the friend home. And Ryan warned James to go home before anything happened. And then Ryan continued to drive the friend home. But James got into his car to leave, and a mysterious assailant fired shots at him. Some of the shots must have struck James, as it caused him to drive the car into a tree. He stumbled out of the car, and then Ryan found him a little bit later after returning from dropping the friend off. James died at the scene, and it's never been discovered who fired the shots that killed James or why. We didn't get a whole lot of information on James, so for now, we're going to move on to the last of the Bakersfield 3, Baylee, as she kind of has a link to everyone in the case. Baylee Despot was 20 years old at the time of her disappearance. She had dreams of joining the Air Force and becoming a flight attendant. However, she was married at the young age of 16 and was divorced 3 years later in 2017. After her divorce, she started hanging out with new friends and started using drugs. Caitlin, Baylee's sister, was friends with Micah and knew him as a clean-cut banker guy. But she found out that Baylee and Micah had become friends, which was odd to her. But it was rumored that Micah and Baylee crossed paths on the drug scene, and Micah had even helped her escape an abusive relationship. He helped her get a restraining order against her ex-boyfriend. They did have a strange friendship, as Baylee was arrested for drunk and disorderly conduct outside of Micah Holsonbake's house in late 2017. Baylee continued to find herself in bad situations. In August of 2017, it was reported that Baylee was drugged and raped by a group of men in an apartment complex. DNA showed at least 3 male donors. This assault took a huge toll on her mental health, as it would anyone, and so she told her friends that she just wanted to numb herself. Baylee's mom, Jane, said Baylee was being picked up by random cars every night, sometimes multiple cars. She would be gone for a few days before coming back with horrific stories of what had happened to her. She never appeared to want to go on these trips, but she told her mom and sister that she had to go. By December 2017, Baylee was dating Matt Queen, a 43-year-old man and a previously convicted felon. She also started acting gangster and wanted to prove how tough she was. She found comfort and safety in being around guns. While out driving, the couple was pulled over by the police, and a gun was found in the center console, and in further search found 4 more loaded guns, which included an AR-15 rifle. Queen was charged with many gun violations, most notably being a felon in possession of a firearm. But Baylee took the fall for Queen and pled to 3 years probation. Shortly after that arrest, Baylee moved in with Matt Queen and his wife. Yes, you heard that correctly. Queen was married with kids, just a few years younger than Baylee, and he moved his girlfriend into the house he shared with his wife, kids, and his mother. He and his wife were supposedly separated, but found the living arrangements to work for them, so they stayed in the same house. I think they had been separated for about 8 years at this point. Baylee would watch the kids and even make dinner for the family, and her friend said she enjoyed playing house, and it gave her a sense of security. Baylee had a friend, Sarah, who was dating another Matt Vanda Castile. The 4 would often hang out since both Matts were best friends. Both people would become important as we move on in this story. To show where we are in the timeline, on March 23rd, after all of this has happened, this is when Micah Holsonbake has gone missing. And again, we'll come back to his story a little bit in more detail. So now I'm going to talk about some kind of random events that impacted the story and the timeline. So this is where it gets a little more confusing, but hopefully it makes sense. So another person in the friend group goes by the name of Sam, not his real name, in the Bakersfield 3 podcast. He was a drug dealer and he helped build the ghost guns with Micah, Queen, and Vanda Castile. And he was also friends with Baylee. At one point, Baylee's phone texted Sam to meet her somewhere. When he arrived, Baylee was not there, but Vanda Castile was. Instead of just walking up to Sam, Vanda Castile ran up to Sam with an AR-15. Sam knew this must have been a setup because you don't run up on someone with a gun just to talk. So Sam had Vanda Castile arrested for assaulting him. This arrest led to Vanda Castile being incarcerated for a period of time. Again, to mark where we are in the timeline, it's now around April 25th, and this is when Baylee Despot has been reported missing. A short time after Baylee's disappearance, Queen was arrested for more gun charges and other things unrelated to Micah or Baylee. It was reported that Queen went to Caleb's house with his gun and a bulletproof vest. He shoved a gun in Caleb's face, who was sleeping in his bed with his girlfriend at the time. Queen then demanded they both get in Queen's truck. He threatened to kill Caleb, referencing police reports that had names redacted on who snitched on Queen to get him arrested previously. Queen said that there could only have been two people who would have snitched, Caleb or Baylee. They drove to the river where Queen made Caleb walk into the water with a gun pointed at his head. Caleb must have said some of the right things because at some point in this exchange, Queen let them go, and Caleb and his girlfriend quickly skipped town after that event.
That's very interesting, that whole series of events with them, because it sounds like he was concerned that Caleb had previously snitched on him. Like, why was he taking action at that time with Caleb? Was he afraid that Caleb knew something else and was going to go to the police? But then also, why did he let him, if that's what his concern was, he did let him get away.
Yes, because Caleb and his girlfriend were like, nope, I'm not going to worry about this. Let's get out of town.
Do you mind if I ask, because I want to make sure that I'm following correctly, but at this point, one person has been murdered for sure, and two people are missing?
Correct.
Okay.
So now, while Vanda Castile is incarcerated due to his assault of Sam, he stays in contact with Sarah, his girlfriend, and he soon finds out that Sarah is hanging out with Queen. Since Baylee is also missing, this hanging out becomes a lot more, and Sarah moves in with Queen and his wife and kids and mom. And Sarah shortly becomes pregnant with Queen's baby as well. Vanda Castile is obviously not happy with Queen stealing his girlfriend, and he starts to drop hints to Sarah and the police that are listening in on the recorded phone line. He knows more about Micah's disappearance and those involved. And since Sarah is with Queen, he has no reason to keep it a secret anymore. The police have been strongly encouraging Vanda Castile to flip on Queen. The police have even showed him the gender reveal video for Sarah and Queen's baby to persuade him to give up the information that he had. Vanda Castile ended up taking a plea deal to testify against Queen. Put a pin in that, and we'll talk about his side of the story. So again, in the timeline, in August of 2018, a severed arm was found in the Kern River. The DNA was finally processed in December of 2018, and it was confirmed to be Micah Holsonbake. The medical examiners were not able to tell if it had been removed post-mortem or not. And at this point, the police ruled Micah's death a homicide. So now there's two people dead and one missing. With Micah's death ruled a homicide, and with the statements given to the police by Vanda Castile, Queen is arrested in July of 2019 for the murder of Micah Holsonbake. This did come as a shock to some people, as they were expecting Queen to be arrested in connection with Baylee's disappearance, not Micah's. In May of 2020, the Kern County DA's office charged Queen, Baylee, and Vanda Castile with the murder of Micah Holsonbake. They layered on all the previous charges related to his kidnapping of Caleb for Queen as well, and so that led to a total of 35 allegations, and Baylee was still missing at this time. Now, this is where we're circling back to what had happened. There are different stories on what happened to Micah. According to Vanda Castile's testimony, Baylee and Queen brought Micah to Vanda Castile's garage to extort Micah for information on a gun that he allegedly stole from Queen. This is where it is suspected that Micah was tortured and killed. Micah was zip-tied to a chair, and Baylee grabbed a paring knife and scissors from Vanda Castile's house. Now, Vanda Castile never saw Queen on this day, but he did observe Baylee a few times when she came into the house, and he described her as seeming shaken and pale. But this is the time when Micah's body was dismembered. Now, according to Queen, during his testimony, it happened differently. Micah, Baylee, and Queen were in Queen's garage, and Queen joked about something to the effect that Micah raped somebody, and Micah took offense to that, as he was known to be very against sex trafficking, and he allegedly attacked Queen. Now, Baylee, in trying to defend Queen, supposedly dropped a 40-pound dumbbell on Micah's head. Queen said there was blood everywhere, and he was afraid his 4-year-old son would walk through the door and see that. So Queen called Vanda Castile and said they needed to borrow his garage. There in the garage, they cut Micah up. They then put the body parts in separate bags and threw them in the river. Queen claims that it was Baylee that murdered Micah, and he only helped her get rid of the body. Sometime after Micah goes missing, Baylee sent messages to her mom that she was moving out of Queen's house. She just needed to get away. Jane, her mom, begged her to come home and offered to pick her up. Jane drove over to Queen's house to get her, but Queen's teenage son said Baylee had already left. Queen later says he saw her get into a car with some Mexican guy, and he hasn't seen her since. He also mentioned that she may be hiding out with the cartel that she had connections with through her dad. And he even went so far to say that someone saw her at a hotel known for sex trafficking. And sometime after that sighting, it was raided by the FBI. However, Baylee still has not been seen since April 25th, 2018. And sometime prior to Queen's trial, in August of 2021, the skull was found in the river east of Piles Boys Camp. It was found in a helmet bag that had been weighted down with rocks, but they were able to use dental records to confirm it was Micah. And then during the trial, even after saying he had nothing to do with Micah's death, Queen took the stand and he told the story about Baylee being the one that killed Micah. And during his testimony, he was allowed to take the court and the lawyers out to where he had said that they took Micah and buried the dumbbell. However, they didn't find anything at that time. But it was approximately where Micah's severed arm had been found only about 5 months after his disappearance. And this is about 3 years after his disappearance. Matt Queen was convicted in 2022 of second-degree murder for killing Micah Holsonbake, which meant it was not premeditated. And he was sentenced to 30 years to life in prison, plus 56 years, after he was found guilty of 26 charges out of the total 35 other allegations. And as part of his plea agreement for testifying, Matt Vanda Castile pleaded no contest to false imprisonment with violence, possession of a firearm by a felon, and an accessory charge in connection with the death of Holsonbake. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Baylee, again, still missing, has warrants out for her arrest for her involvement in Micah's murder. So even with Queen in prison, Micah's family is still suffering. Another bone was found in July 2023 that was also determined to be Micah's. His family is horrified to think that they must grieve all over again each time a piece of Micah is found, yet they are still relieved to get a part of him back. They know it may be years, if at all, before they can get all of him back. A big part of this case that I haven't yet mentioned is the role of the parents of all of the Bakersfield 3. It started with Micah's parents, Cheryl and Lance Holsonbake. They started looking for their son right away. They even spent time going out to the desert and digging holes looking for Micah. And they also began tracking down his friends. Cheryl and Lance knew that James was a friend of Micah's, so when he was murdered, they reached out to his mother, Diane Kulstad. While they weren't sure if Micah's disappearance and James's murder had any connections. They knew the men had mutual friends. The parents could work together and find answers. And while driving around looking for Micah, the Holsonbakes saw posters about Baylee Despot's disappearance. They recalled someone telling them to reach out to Baylee parents, who was a friend of Micah's. But until they did more research, they didn't make the connection that Baylee parents was Baylee Despot. Cheryl reached out to Jane Parent, Baylee's mom. The three moms quickly began working together, making posters and doing whatever they could to find their kids. They are the ones who coined the name Bakersfield 3. They believed there had to be a connection between the Bakersfield 3. They ran in the same circles and all disappeared or were murdered within 30 days of each other. Parents did tons of work in their community to bolster the systems that could help them find missing people or solve cases. They raised funds for sonar equipment, to do water searches in Bakersfield, to aid the discovery of missing people or missing bodies. They also funded the secret witness tip line to offer rewards to viable tipsters. And they still continue to hold fundraisers to raise money for equipment and tools that will help others in their situation find answers. Cheryl and Lance Holsonbake, Diane Kulstad, and Jane Parent all continued to search for answers about their kids. Now it's time to speculate. Are all of these three cases related, other than being friends with each other? Who killed Micah? Was it Matt or was it Baylee? Did Baylee get away or was she killed? And who killed James? Do you guys have any theories, any speculations to start with? I know we have probably a lot to talk about.
This makes me never want to have a friend again.
The power of these three women, these three mothers together, they do the work.
Yes, and the Bakersfield 3 podcast mostly focused from the mother's point of view. They all had unique skills. They all complemented each other. So that one was good at one thing and one was good at another and another was good at another. Matt Queen, there's so much behind him being a total jerk all around. He had a ton of Facebook posts, and one of his Facebook posts was, how would you feel if one of the Bakersfield 3 was responsible for one of the other Bakersfield 3's disappearance or murder? And so the mothers had even thought about that, because obviously Jane's daughter is accused of killing Micah, but they all still stuck together even through that.
Did they all have relatively good relationships with their children?
They did. Like Micah would call his mom every day. And remember, Baylee was 20, but the other guys were in their 30s. They were adults. But Baylee did live with her mom. I believe James did as well, because it was actually her car that was crashed into the tree. And Micah, I think, was also, between his divorce, was living with his parents at the time as well. But yeah, they all had great relationships.
The Baylee lived with Matt Queen, right?
Yes, she did live with her mom originally when the strange cars were picking her up every night.
Oh, that's right. I just have to wonder what would make you choose option with the wife and the mom over her mom if there wasn't something strained.
And I think at that point there was. Matt Queen did a lot of posting and a lot of weird things to and about Jane, Baylee's mom, saying that Jane was the problem. That was the reason why Baylee wanted to get away. And Matt Queen was a very intelligent guy. His messages they were pretty coherent and things, but he very much blamed Jane for a lot of things with Baylee.
I wonder too if Baylee was using drugs, that it was maybe more accessible living with Matt Queen. If he was also using drugs, it sounds like they were involved in using, that maybe that was something her mom tried to intervene on with her being home. So maybe she just found it easier for the lifestyle that she wanted to have to live with him.
Baylee had also gotten married at 16, which is different. Most people don't get married at 16. And then her dad wasn't in the picture either, but Matt Queen said that he had cartel connections. So I don't know
I feel like something had to be fishy with that relationship with Baylee and her mom. Because there's a lot of interesting choices that were made.
Yeah.
Which would not have been options to even consider if you were happy in a secure home.
And obviously, again, I was listening to the podcast that was focused around the parents. It seemed like Baylee was able to tell her mom a lot of things as far as like when she would be gone in these mystery cars, she would come back and tell her all that had happened to her. And when she was raped, she came home that night with her mom, and her mom's like, "We can't take a shower. We need to take you to the hospital. We need to take you to the police." And she did all of that with her mom. No, I agree. There had to have been something, but I don't know if it was Matt like brainwashing her into those thoughts or if it was her original thoughts.
I was just going to ask if anyone was ever charged in any of that, or did they find anyone that was responsible for the rape of Baylee?
I don't believe so, but they did find 3 distinct DNA markers.
So it sounds like Matt Queen had no problem racking up charges, but is this the most severe thing he had done, or was it mostly petty stuff until this?
It was all related to gun sales and gun possession and things like that. They did call him Scary Matt. I don't know if it's just distinction between him and Vanda Castile since they were friends and hung out together, but I don't think anybody wanted to mess with him. He was an electrician by trade. He didn't look like a big, intimidating guy.
This question will lead into my speculation. When Baylee was moving in with Matt Queen and his wife, they were separated, but still living under the same house. And then after Baylee, another girl moved in as the girlfriend role with the wife, so living there. My mind keeps going to sex trafficking. What role did that wife really play? Were they truly separated? Was it I'm here for financial reasons and I'm fine with this person being here and playing a role in my children's lives? Because Baylee said that she enjoyed playing house. So she's active with these children. Do we have any information on where this estranged wife plays into this?
No, I didn't really get any other information other than she had a separate bedroom than Matt. They didn't give a whole lot of details on her.
I was going to ask, was his mom not her mom? Because I thought maybe if it was her mom, that would be extra incentive to continue to live in this nightmare.
And apparently that was another thing that was brought up too, is Matt was an electrician, plus he's probably making tons of bankroll on these illegal guns that he's selling. It was a nice house in a nice neighborhood, so it wasn't the trashy houses on Skid Row.
I would be so pissed if somebody dismembered somebody in my garage.
I don't know that Vanda Castile knew that, because apparently he and Sarah, his girlfriend at the time, were in the house, but they never went out to the garage until after they had left. And then they saw like a grapefruit size spot of blood in his garage. So he knew something had happened, but he didn't know what exactly.
I call BS on that. Okay, let's just play this out. They call and say, "Hey man, we need your garage for a while." I'm assuming this wasn't like a 30-minute situation. You don't go outside just to say hi or see if you can help with whatever this secret mission is. I don't believe this.
But I feel like when there's gun making and drug selling and gang relations, that if one of your boys calls and says, "I need this place," don't ask any questions, you just do that.
And it was Scary Matt that was calling him. So he's, "Sure, dude, whatever you need."
But that's his best friend, right?
Yeah, it's his best friend too.
Like, you're not going to walk outside and say, "Hey, I'll have a beer with you while you're doing what you're doing."
He might have known that something nefarious was happening, but he didn't want to get involved with it because he knew that was Matt's deal. And it was a detached garage too. It wasn't like he could potentially hear things. They did say they could tell there were saw marks on the arm. And
was there any damage to Micah's skull when they found it?
I have not heard anything. At one point, the police thought that he was killed with a gunshot wound, but they weren't able to prove that. So you'd think you'd either have a little gunshot or you'd have a cracked skull, one way or the other. But I didn't see anything that was definitive.
Didn't they say that the dumbbell dropped on his head?
Yes.
If they found his skull, wouldn't there be a cracked skull from a dumbbell?
I would think so.
And
Yeah.
how do you accidentally drop a dumbbell in somebody's head?
I don't know that she accidentally did it and she was like 110 pounds or something. 40-pound dumbbell is light. So can you imagine she'd have to, wherever Micah was sitting or standing or whatever, if they were fighting, she had to lift it over his head to be able to drop it.
This is actually going to play into a little bit about speculation, but did I understand that the story is that the dumbbell was accidentally dropped on Micah's head, but it killed him?
Yeah, because supposedly Micah was attacking Matt, and so Baylee came in to defend Matt, and her only weapon was to drop the dumbbell on his head.
So the
Now, I
dumbbell
mean, they're
was meant to stop Micah from attacking Matt.
supposedly. Again, this is Matt's story.
Sure.
I can't believe they let him testify to this in court. Just picking up a 40-pound dumbbell is not like picking up a crowbar or something. That's not an instant thing that you can just grab to use as self-defense.
Matt has all of these guns around, and you're going to use a dumbbell? Baylee had a ton of pictures on her Facebook with her holding guns, and she was excited that she had shot a gun. So maybe not use a dumbbell.
I keep going to the sex trafficking thing, and the reason why is because with the gang raping, and it was noted that she was getting in cars on a regular basis, but didn't want to. It appeared that this was not something she was excited to do. And so I almost feel like there's little nuggets of truth. And for peace of mind, I'm just going to throw this out there for the listeners. We do only speculate, and we will always believe the victims. We will never speculate that she was not brutally gang raped. That's not part of this at all. But I almost wonder if there's just little nuggets of truth, because what if somehow she was responsible for Micah's death? That nugget of truth is Micah and Queen were fighting. Another reason that makes me wonder that is Matt Queen is willing to be open about so much. There was even a TikTok that I found where this lady had been talking to this man online for a little while, and after a few weeks he was like, so I can't believe you're still talking to me. Do you not know who I am? And she was like, no. And he said, Google me. You're proud of that. I would not tell somebody to Google me if there was shit out there about me that I wasn't proud of or trying to hide or didn't want to get in front of the truth. But it was almost like a, I'm going to puff my chest out, Google me kind of thing. So it almost seems to think that there's little nuggets of truth that we're getting with his story of him not playing as much of a role in maybe the Micah part, but it makes me wonder about Baylee. And then I wonder too, is where I keep going to the sex trafficking thing. She is this young, cute girl that could easily make girlfriends no matter what country or city or state she's in. We've got the money to change her ID or whatever because of the cartel and all these things that play a factor. Like, she would be too much of an asset to just rid of.
Yes. And there was other speculation in some of the things I read that this whole group of friends was very much into drugs, guns, and sex trafficking. And for whatever reason, Micah was always trying to help people and get them out of all of that. So that's where the story can somewhat be true, where, he was super against any sex trafficking that would come up. We all should be against sex trafficking. But apparently he was very vocal in his friend group that was like, he'll do drugs, he'll do guns, he's not doing that, apparently. But part of the reason why they charged Baylee is so that Matt could tell his story. They could say, oh yeah, we believe him. Like, they might not, but that way they could say, yep, that's his story and he's sticking to it, whether it was true or not. Somehow it was tied with that.
Does Baylee's mom or anyone connected to Baylee think that she's still alive? Because I just feel as if there's a huge possibility that she still could be.
I think they're always holding out hope, but I think for the most part, they believe that Matt killed her, that if he was responsible for Micah's death, then she knew too much and he killed her. And that's actually what I think what Micah's parents said shortly after she went missing. After she went missing, they're like, oh, Matt did something to Micah and Baylee knew too much, so she's gone too.
Even if it was an accident or a heat of the moment kind of thing, if Baylee did it, they were able to get rid of Baylee but still utilize her. And that's how he's got the whole mentality of, I didn't do this, because he didn't do that part. He just helped her get away.
Yeah, and Matt for sure has some type of, I don't know if it's narcissistic or what, but invincibility for sure. Because even while he's out on probation or out on parole, whatever, he's still committing kidnappings and other gun. He doesn't care. He still keeps getting arrested, doing the same old thing. Doesn't like it when people snitch on him, apparently. But because the question is too, like when he and Baylee got pulled over, what caused them to get pulled over? I suppose maybe because he was a felon. If they saw a gun in the center console, then they could search the whole car. But how did they see the gun in the center console? So even that has some mystery behind what happened there.
Is this where the police corruption comes into play? Because I noticed when you had first started really getting into the story, I kept thinking in my head, how are all these things going on? And people are on probation, but they violate their probation and there's no repercussions to it.
So in 2020, which I don't know the rules there, but I know in a lot of states, there was a big push for bail reform, which made it very difficult to put people back in jail if they violate their probation or if they get arrested. So I don't know if that was the case there. I'm totally speculating on that, but I'm wondering if that had anything to do with it.
So after Baylee's disappearance, her friends were trying to contact her. And I think one of them got a Snapchat message from her and was trying to figure out what was going on. Well, apparently she had an iPhone 5. And so when people were getting messages from her, they could see that the messages were coming from her iPhone 5. After her disappearance, those messages that looked like they were coming from Baylee's phone, now coming from a Samsung phone. And then sometime after that, they were coming from an iPhone 7. At some point, Matt said that he took the SIM card out of Baylee's phone and was using it in his phone. There was speculation when Sam, the drug dealer that was assaulted by Matt Van de Castile, he had gotten a message from Baylee's phone, but was it really Baylee's phone? At one point, Baylee had her phone with her when she went missing, and then she didn't, and Matt had it. And at some point when Matt was in prison or in jail, he called his wife, I don't know where Sarah or Baylee were to bail him out, and said something about, yeah, you got to go take my tools and you got to go take Baylee's phone that's in the back of my car and bring it to my brother's house or something to that effect. And they have recorded phone messages of this. Supposedly that's where the switch from the SIM card happened. Very mixed up.
Cindy, how long did Baylee live with Matt Queen?
She moved in the beginning of 2018, and then she went missing in April. Just a few months.
So how long in between when Baylee was reported missing and Micah was reported missing?
Micah was March 23rd and she was April 25th. And then James was killed in the middle of that, April 8th.
I think you said everything happened like a 30-day time frame, right?
Do you know how old Sarah was?
Matt Van de Castile was right around 30. So I'm assuming they were all around that 30-ish age. She sounded very young when they were listening to some of the recorded prison calls.
Do you know, Cindy, James knew Micah through the bank that Micah worked at. They were at least friendly or had some level of a relationship. Do we know if James and Matt Queen had any level of relationship, or is it just assumed because they all were in that same circle?
I don't know that they made any direct connection to Matt Queen other than all the friends. And I think the prosecutors did say that they didn't find any strong connection between James's case and Baylee and Micah's cases. There's always the possibility, but they assume that one is more on its own. It just happened to be right between them.
I don't know how to phrase this. Because we all can assume that Baylee was escorting at that time, right?
At least before she got together with Matt Queen. I'm not sure about after.
I'm just wondering if that's how they met. Do we know how they met?
No, we don't. I didn't catch how they met.
And it's almost like she graduated to come live with the wife and the mom.
The kids.
I'm just wondering if there was any connection.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if she met Matt through Micah. That could have been.
I'm just saying, like, that could be another reason why she was like, yes, I will move in with all of these people if I don't have to continue to do this anymore.
Yeah, and I do think she, especially after her assault or after her rape, she was looking to Matt as this big, strong guy that could take care of her and give her security and all of that. So it could be that it got her out of the whatever sex work, voluntary or involuntary, that she was in.
David, I feel like now what Cindy is saying even more, and Janelle's questions plays into what you were thinking with the sex trafficking now.
Yeah, when I think of the rape and the drug involvement and the location, that's just where I keep going.
I wonder if she was trying to pay off a drug debt. It was not something that she wanted to do.
Yeah, it said she got into recreational. I feel like she wasn't as addicted as James and Micah, but it just might not have come out that way.
Then that means she's the perfect one to be muling them, right? Because you're not going to be scraping off the top and taking some. The best drug dealer is the one that doesn't do drugs.
So are we ready for you guys' speculation, or do you have more questions?
I think I have more questions. Was there any kind of like timeline that Matt number 2 gave about how long this garage incident took place?
I don't think so. I don't think it was like overnight. So if it happened at Queen's house, he said it looked like you dumped over a red can of paint. That's how much blood apparently was at his house that he didn't want his kid to walk in on. So they had to clean that up, take Micah somehow. He had a Silverado truck, so probably loaded him in the back of the truck to bring him over to the other Matt's house, Castile, to cut him up. Did you just leave the blood in your garage? No one saw you carry this body looking thing, which was a body, into the back of your truck, dump it off at the other Matt's house?
I'm really stuck on this garage thing. First of all, how is there only a small spot of blood?
Maybe they dextered it and put down plastic.
If you're going to cut somebody up, you're going to put something underneath. You're not just going to cut them up at the garage, right? I think you'd have like tarp or something. Totally Dexter style.
Janelle's questions are also going to just throw a wrench in everything I was thinking of. But we need to go down this road about the blood, because now I do have questions as well. There
are crimes that are maybe not as messy as others, but this is not one of them.
And they didn't say obviously if it's a power saw or if it was just hopefully not a handsaw. And also, Castile said that he was zip tied to a chair, right? Sitting in a chair, you have your arms out. And the severed arm that was found had zip ties around the wrist. So if you'd killed him in your garage because there was a dumbbell dropped on his head, why would you need to put a zip tie around his wrist?
And how would you even get him up with the zip tie still on? What happened to the chair? Did you move him still in the chair? I almost am to the point where I have to believe these stories because they're so ludicrous that you couldn't make them up.
The truth for sure is that in somebody's garage, he was dismembered. That's about all we know. But it was who killed him, when was he killed, what happened in that regard. And ironically, in both cases, the people that found the arm and the head were kids. So there was like a 5-year-old girl that found the arm. And then there were some boys that found this duffel bag. And they were all excited because they're like, oh, it's like a hidden treasure. They thought there'd be money or something in there. And so they open it up and there's a sweatshirt. Matt Queen actually got choked up on the stand because kids found body parts.
Don't put the body near a boys' camp then.
Yeah, exactly.
Cindy, do you know how old his youngest child was?
He was worried about his 4-year-old coming out.
So from
and
4 to, you said 17.
Something like that. He had teenagers for sure.
I get it. Be considerate. Your 4-year-old doesn't see dead body in the garage. However, this does not seem like a household where the kids are only allowed to watch Disney Plus if you got guns and drugs and who knows what else.
I was going to say that whole kid thing makes me think that's his way of, oh, I'm a good person.
So the whole go to the trouble of moving somebody who, for all appearances, it sounds like he had to be moved still tied to the chair.
Yes, if he put his hands behind the chair and they zip tied it, they didn't have to zip tie him to the chair. His wrist just had to be zip tied, right? So if they tipped him over, the chair wouldn't be connected, maybe?
It's all just very strange to me. So Cindy, how long was it in between when Baylee disappeared and when Sarah moved in?
It was like 3 weeks. It was a very short
Oh.
time.
It would seem to me that might have been going on before Baylee disappeared.
There was speculation that maybe Sarah and Matt Queen had at least some type of closer relationship while he was with Baylee, but that wasn't proven.
That could contribute to motive.
And this is where the timeline gets all muddled. But there was a time as well that Baylee was pregnant with Matt Queen's kid, or at least that's what Jane, her mom, came home and found her bathroom was like all redone. The shower door had been replaced and the toilet had been replaced, I believe. And Baylee said it was because she miscarried and had fallen out of the shower and broke the shower door and did something to the toilet as well. And then there had been a lot of talk between Matt Queen and Jane about like, how could you get my daughter pregnant? This is the last thing she needs. And Matt Queen had said, I love Baylee. Baylee loves me. We are going to have a beautiful baby girl. And she was only like 6 weeks pregnant, apparently. There was no way to tell if it was going to be a girl or not.
I think I have one more question too. Vanda Castile, you had said that there were rumors or at least thoughts that a lot of this group was involved in kind of sex trafficking and or escorting women. Was Vanda Castile part of that, or at least rumored to be part of that situation as well?
I don't know that they really called out any specific names with that. Just that if it wasn't necessarily the main players in this case, they were all attached to other friends. So I don't know specifically that Matt Vanda Castile was. All we know for sure is that Micah didn't like it.
I would also assume that if you were that adamant and against it, you wouldn't associate with these people.
Yeah, Micah would manufacture these ghost guns, which means they just don't have serial numbers. That's why they're ghost guns. But Micah would be doing all of this stuff under duress, and his mom would say, let's just get you away from this. Don't do this anymore. And he's, I can't, because if I don't, they're going to come after my family, which meant ex-wife and his son and his mom and dad. Micah was forced to do all of that, and may also have been forced to be friends, in quotes, with these people. I don't know if he hung out with them or if he just did business transactions.
Do we know anything about baby mama of the 4-year-old?
No.
Clearly it was not his wife.
I would assume it was, but yeah, I don't know. Who knows? Maybe when he didn't have a girlfriend living there, he just hooked back up with her. Yeah, I just assumed whatever kids were living there was from him and his wife, but don't know that. Are we ready to speculate? All right, so David, I'm going to start with you. I know you gave us your speculation earlier. Has it changed after we've had some of these questions, or are you still holding strong with what you said?
No, if anything, I'm holding strong. I feel that Matt has some kind of confidence about his story, so there has to be enough truth for him to be on dating websites and to say Google me and things like that. There has to be enough confidence in him to not hide under the radar. I think there's nuggets of truth in his story. He's still a bad guy, but I think that he's able to use certain things of, oh, I'm a father and I wouldn't want my kids to see this. He was given a platform to paint a picture of him having morals and values that don't exist.
What was Matt Queen's story about what happened to Baylee?
He just said that she left and got in some car. He said, or she went to go hide with the cartel because she had connections from her dad. Or she was back into the sex trafficking and was at some hotel someone had seen her at.
I keep going between what you were saying was the parent speculation that Matt killed Micah, who then killed Baylee because she knew too much. That was like my very first right away. But then with David's theory, now my head's a little over there too. I might be sailing toward his island because that makes sense to me as well. I don't think that Baylee killed Micah. I think Matt killed Micah. When we talk about James, I have no idea what James has to do with any of it. It doesn't seem coincidental though. All I know is that Matt's in, unless Micah knew something and then James was a really good friend of his and then he told James, or James had knowledge of something too, and that's why James had to go. And Baylee also had to go. And I also think maybe he could have forced her to go into maybe sex trafficking just to get rid of her. But also if he's having no problem killing people, then he might have killed her. But that's my thoughts.
It's very confusing. It could be any of those and all of those and none of those all at the same time. So David, what was your theory with James? Do you think he's connected?
I hate this, but when Missy mentioned James's name, I was like, he got lost in the story. But then I immediately went to, if Matt had something to do with James's death, then James gets lost in the story and we're focused on Baylee, which could be part of the plan of, we'll focus on Baylee because I'm confident that I didn't do that, so I can convince people of that, and we're going to lose James in the story.
Carolina, are you ready?
Starting with James, I guess that's where I have a hard time without more information tying his murder to the case of Micah and Baylee. Without knowing what level of relationship or interaction he may have had with Matt Queen or that crowd. Like, we know there's a connection with Micah. I just feel like I have a hard time tying it, but it does feel very coincidental because it all seems like they were running necessarily in the same crowd. So I'm sure that they did cross paths, but I would want more information to say that those ones are tied together. So I think I'm landing on that those are probably not connected. For Micah and Matt Queen and Matt Vandercastile, we know they're connected. We know how they're connected. We know that they have relationships amongst each other. I would want to know more about Baylee's relationship with Micah. For my speculation, I'm assuming some parts of their relationship. You had said that there were rumors or thoughts that Micah had helped Baylee get out of an abusive relationship, maybe even helped her get a restraining order against an abusive partner. To me, that shows that Micah had some level of feelings of protection over Baylee and that relationship that they had together. I could see a scenario happening, and I'm going to pull at every thread of Matt Queen's story. Unfortunately, Baylee is not here to tell her side of the story, which I think is very convenient for the story that Matt Queen has told. Matt Vandercastile said that he thought Micah was brought to his garage to extort some information about a potential gun that he stole. Matt Queen said they were in the garage and there was a fight that broke out because he had claimed Micah accused him of raping somebody. I think there can be truths in all of these stories. Maybe Matt Vandercastile, the story that was told to him by Matt Queen, or the story that he heard, that's what he thought was happening, or he knew that Micah had stolen a gun, so that's what he assumed this was about. I have a hard time believing he just let them be in their garage and not ever go out. But I think David mentioned it. If you're in that kind of crime world of making these guns, doing all of this, he might have just been like, nope, hands off. I'm not going out there because this is not my business. I don't want to get tied to anything. I have a hard time wondering how they got Micah to the garage. Like, how did they lure him there? I have some questions about that.
I'm sorry, and I have another big piece of the puzzle that may help or hurt your speculation on that.
Uh-oh.
Previously, again, I'm not sure where in the timeline this happened, but they sent from Baylee's phone, Baylee and Matt Queen sent a picture that showed Baylee in some type of distress. I can't remember what the cause was. They showed her like she was dead or something to that effect, sent to Micah so that he would rush over and save her. So Micah did come over. And then when Baylee popped up and was like, hi, I'm here. Yeah, I knew you weren't dead. I knew that didn't really happen. So they had already played that trick on him for whatever reason, just to see if he would respond to Baylee being hurt. And again, like you said, I don't know if it's a big brother relationship or just a protector relationship. They had already done that prior. So it might have been easy to coax Micah over because if Baylee was in trouble, he was going to go help her.
That is interesting. So I don't know if that helps or hurts my speculation here, but I think that explains more how he wound up there, because I think it could be both ways. I think that Matt Queen is probably responsible for Micah's death. That is what my thoughts are. I feel like this dumbbell story, there would be damage on the skull. I just don't feel like I buy that. But whether Micah was lured to Matt Vandercasteel's house with a picture like that, or he was just aware that there were things happening with Baylee, like he knew that Baylee was in this very bad situation. If she was being sex trafficked by Matt Queen, Micah might have wanted to try to save her from that situation. And he could have gone to Matt Vandercasteel's house to try to extricate Baylee. And I think David made a very good point that there's usually a kernel of truth in everything that's being said. And so when Matt Queen testified at the trial, he had said that the fight broke out because he accused Micah of rape, and Micah had some very strong feelings about the sex trafficking. So what if Micah went there to try to get Baylee out of there? A fight broke out of him saying, you're sex trafficking her. I'm getting her out. She's leaving with me. This is the end of this. And that's that kernel of truth that Matt Queen is bringing up. A fight broke out. Matt Queen ended up killing Micah in front of Baylee. I think that could tie into the fact that Baylee was seen in the house by Matt Vandercasteel, looking pale, looking sick. She just witnessed this happening. Shortly after Micah went missing, Baylee was calling her mom saying, I'm going to leave Matt Queen. I honestly think that Matt Queen tried to convince her, nope, it's all okay. You need to keep this a secret. We're going to get rid of this body. Maybe she even helped him get rid of the body, but she wanted out afterwards. Maybe she threatened to go to the police. I don't think that it would be too far-fetched that Matt Queen would have taken drastic measures to stop her from doing that. Given the story about Caleb and his girlfriend, the fact that he came in and took them out and had them at gunpoint, I think if he was in the face of Baylee saying, I'm going to go to the police, I'm going to tell them what I know, I'm going to say that you killed Micah, he might have dealt with that in a situation of potentially killing her. That's where I feel like I'm landing, and some of it's speculation because we don't know. We don't have Baylee's side of this story at all. But I think that's where I'm landing given the evidence that we have.
It could, again, all of it could be true, none of it, some of it, you just don't know. All right, so Janelle, I'm going to go to you next, but I have one other tip that again, the story was so massive that I couldn't put everything in. So you asked how long until Sarah moved in. So again, Baylee went missing end of April. The Bakersfield 3 podcast started out with a friend of Baylee's dad coming home and finding Baylee's luggage at his house with a note that said something like, "I love you, Baylee." Matt Queen had dropped off all of her luggage at this friend's house, and that was in the summer. So if you say May, June, July, 2 to 3 months, he was probably getting Baylee's stuff out so Sarah could move in. It might have been, instead of 3 weeks, it might have been like 3 months-ish time. So one other tidbit with that, in the Ring camera when he was dropping off the luggage, somehow they saw a gun in his waistband on the Ring camera, and they sent that to the police, and then he was arrested again for having a gun.
So I feel like I'm pretty close to Carolina, but I think there is a lot of paranoia involved in this story. Like the Caleb kidnapping, the thinking Micah stole a gun. I think that also interacted with what happened to Baylee and maybe even James, if he's just constantly thinking of these people who have done him wrong. But I definitely think both Matts were involved. You cannot tell me he did not go out there to see what was going on. Even when Baylee was coming in and out of the house looking like a mess, you're not asking any questions. You're not going out to check. I'm calling bullshit. I don't know what kind of deal he got, but he really had nothing to lose because he was already in jail. But you can't tell me that he did not know what was taking place, or at least thought something questionable was taking place that shouldn't be taking place in your garage. I think maybe afterwards, Baylee was cracking, which also could lead for more paranoia for Matt. Maybe he didn't trust her to keep her mouth shut. Maybe she found out about Sarah and then maybe use that. I could go to the police anytime I want to. I can't say for sure about James, but it's all this terrible circle. Why are these people friends with these people that are not their friends? But I don't really feel like Baylee is just out there on a beach drinking a margarita. And I can only think of one person with motive to hurt her.
Yep, I would agree as well. There was her ex-boyfriend, though, that she had the restraining order against, or her ex-husband. We don't know anything about him, or the multitude of strangers.
She clearly did not disappear on her own, as her stuff was all still inside the house. So that's very telling. She didn't run away.
Yep. And that's where I've landed too. I don't think James really had anything to do with the other two, other than, again, just being friends and having, I'm sure, some mutual contacts, good or bad. Unless we knew more about this chiropractor who maybe he was running guns and stuff too. So maybe he was with Matt Queen and Matt Van de Castile. So maybe that was the connection, but at least I didn't see any of that. And in fact, the chiropractor was not charged with anything related to these cases. And I would say that Van de Castile was not the innocent bystander by any means, but probably didn't have anything to do with Micah or Baylee's disappearance or death, other than it being at his house and not asking the right questions. If he chose to, he did, when after everybody had left, he did find that blood spot. I don't know if at that same time or sometime later, he did report that to the police, and they did confirm it was Micah's DNA. If he was killed at Queen's house, and I don't know how closely everybody lived together, but by the time he got over to Matt Van de Castile's house, if he had died at Matt Queen's house, there wouldn't be any blood to be left at Van de Castile's house, right? If he was at Queen's house with Baylee, why would you need to zip tie him to a chair? He would already be dead. There would be no reason for zip ties, unless the zip ties were used to transport him. See, I'm talking myself in and out of everything. I think what most likely happened, because Matt Van de Castile didn't have a whole lot to lose. He'd already lost his girlfriend and his best friend. I think his story is more closer to the truth. But like David said, there may be pieces that Queen brought in. But prosecutors were very upset because he was trying to throw blame completely on Baylee and basically be like, I'm the innocent guy. I was just helping her. And then you transported corpse at some point if you were dropping things into the river. So regardless, Matt Queen is definitely guilty of a whole lot of things. So being in jail for 30 years plus 56 years, which I just realized 30 to life for Micah's murder. I was like, he only got 30 years for the murder and 56 years for gun charges. Doesn't quite seem reasonable. But, and then also the family was upset because they were hoping that it was premeditated based on Matt Vandecasteel's story that they lured him over there to be extorted for information. Both charges were available for them to choose, and they chose the non-premeditated one to find him guilty. And I agree. I think that Matt Queen definitely had something to do with Baylee's disappearance. I don't like David's viewpoint of if he wanted her to go missing into the sex trafficking ring, he probably had connections and the ability to do that. And she hopefully is, again, I don't know if that's a hopefully, is hopefully still alive, but I think even Baylee's mom said that she does believe that Baylee is dead. And in some regards, she looks at that. I don't know if blessing was the right word, but she said Baylee was actually finally able to get out of her situation with Matt Queen and everything else that she had been a part of if she was no longer here. So again, it's always sad with the parents. I don't know that it gives them peace, but I also look at Micah's parents who are probably for an eternity going to be finding random bones showing up on the shore that they don't know if is their son. And I think, as I mentioned in the story, that was one thing that they were trying to get expedited was like DNA results. They said you shouldn't have to wait months or years to figure out if the piece of bone that someone found was your child. I think that is about my speculation too. Does anybody else have anything else to add before I summarize and close out?
I have one more thought. I wonder if Matt Queen seduced Sarah to keep her in line because she could have known what was happening in garage time too.
Yep. So she was also at the house.
And
yeah.
I don't care who you are, girls are nosy. We will take any opportunity to go see what is happening in that garage.
But would you though? I could get it if it was just your boyfriend and maybe it was a man cave kind of deal, but no denying who this person is and what they're about and what they run around with.
And
I guess I'm playing the card of Sarah was this innocent person who had no involvement in any of these things. I don't think that's true.
No, I don't think so either.
I guess I'm giving too much credit and thinking Sarah is just a normal person like us. Like, I know if my friend Baylee has been out there for 8 hours, like, there's no way I'm not trying to suss this out. But again, I'm giving too much credit to their normalcy, which clearly they are not.
I love the fact that Micah was dead set against sex trafficking. But if everyone is able to say that and to be that openly and publicly known to be against something, it's because it has played a factor into your life somehow.
I feel like that had something to do with Baylee, but I don't know that for sure.
But with true sex trafficking, I don't think they let you go home afterwards.
No.
And that was another thing I was going to ask too is, you know how phrases get used and it loses the real meaning of, is this a sex trafficking thing or a human trafficking thing, or is this like a pimping out kind of payment arrangement for drugs?
Yeah. And it seems weird that they would pick her up at her mom's house. And they were always in like black SUVs. As we conclude our exploration of the Bakersfield 3 case, this is why I really want to thank patients who suggested this case to us, because obviously this was prime for speculation. The mysteries continue in this case, leaving us with far more questions than answers. The interconnected disappearance of Micah Holsonbake, James Kulstad, and Baylee Despot remain hauntingly unresolved. We've delved into timelines, potential connections, and theories that swirl around this puzzle. And as we await further developments, let us not forget the lives that were mysteriously altered. If you have any information regarding the deaths of James Kulstad or Micah Holsonbake, or the disappearance of Baylee Despot, please call Secret Witness at 661-332-4040. And then join us next time as we continue to speculate wildly about crime.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to our show today. We ask you to please subscribe to us on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else that you find your favorite podcasts, just so you don't miss out on any of our episodes. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at SWACPod, SWACPOD, or you can contact us via email for questions, comments, or case ideas. Our email address is swacpod@gmail.com. That's SWACPOD@gmail.com. Thanks so much for speculating wildly with us tonight.